Hello and welcome to the Platinum Group interview series. I'm Dale Kirshner and today we're talking with Steve Coleman. Steve is a marketing guru who has worked in major corporations and over the years has found in listening to business owners the need to help them with transitions, particularly family businesses as they transition either through the next generation of leadership or as they look to sell or even grow their business in different ways. Steve, thanks for taking some time to visit with us today.
It's a privilege. I'm glad to be a part of this outreach that we have initiated and you have guided us on in this time of pandemic.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate hearing all your different views and your different perspectives. And that's one thing about Platinum Group that I hope people really realize through all this is there is a diverse, rich talent base here. And I'm looking forward to talking with you today about your talent and your expertise and your perspectives. And with that said, you've seen a lot over the years, just like everybody else. And I kind of asked the same question. How is what we're going through today different than what you've seen previously with major economic challenges?
Well, the difference is that it's been greatly sudden, a big surprise, a shock. And the other difference is multiple things happening at once. We've never seen anything like the medical and the economic disruption that we are now experiencing. And so it's a double whammy.
Yep. And I know that said, how have, you're helping companies with the transitions that they were planning or are in the middle of. How has this affected their plans?
In some ways, it has naturally caused a slowdown, a pause. The sudden loss has caught many of our clients, our family business owners, off balance. And so they have been surprised. They've lost their footing, their stance, their confidence. And so the instinctive response is to lean back and say, better wait, better calm down, see how this turns out. And then there's another significant minority of our owners that we serve who have very alertly said, wow, this is so enormous, changing environment that there have to be some new opportunities. These disruptions bring to us new opportunities. I better be looking for those. And so they have leaned forward and they are not being silent. They're not looking down, they're looking up and they're looking out.
Given all the different changes that you mentioned have happened and how fast they're occurring, we've talked before about the Great Recession kind of changing everything from where we could plan 10 years out and 5 years out to all of a sudden you have to plan, 1 year out and 3 years out. Today, going from these planning processes where you could plan a transition over the course of 3 to 5 years, is there a new norm for planning? And if so, what is it?
Well, there are two requirements that are being thrust upon us. One is flexibility. We don't know when the pandemic will come to either a ramp down or a vaccine or some way of providing safety and a restoration of confidence for people to get out and go out and do things. And so there's the need for flexibility. And the second thing is shorter time horizon. We've seen it before. We took a long time recovering from the 2008 recession. And I think that memory is very clear. It's very present in the foreground of many owners that are saying, well, this isn't the same, but we got hammered before and now we're getting hammered twice or in two different ways. I'm not sure how long this is going to last. I don't have any confidence to go out 10 years, maybe 5, maybe 3, but for sure, let's get started. And so my encouragement, and I try and come to this as I listen to the owners say where they are, what they're feeling, and where their energy, their confidence, their vision might be pointing. I encourage them to not be passive or sit still too long. Taking some action, taking some new risk, in my opinion, is essential. And if they're going to have a hope, a plan, a confidence of doing better in the time ahead.
Mhm.
They need right now, this week, next week, this month, to be thinking, testing, trying new things that can and will be applied or become broader and deeper in their business, in their product or service, when things, well, we say normalize, get to a new stability.
You know, for some of the companies, they have the time right now because they're shut down or partially shut down. For a lot of other ones, they are just scrambling to keep their heads above water and to try to figure out how to pay their bills. How do you take the time to explore, like you're talking about, while still keeping the lights turned on?
Dale, from the outset, when it became clear that we're entering a, a well, it's a mandate to socially distance, we as partners met and in 15 minutes came to an agreement among ourselves that our responsibility, our care for our clients was to reach out to them, let them know that we're listening. We're not giving advice. The best advice is no advice, just listen. And so we committed to do that. And in the time since, we have reached out to all of the clients, the companies, the owners, the leaders that we've worked with over at least the last 5 years. And what we have heard consistently from these conversations is, I'm glad we talked. It feels better to have an opportunity to express and to let out some of the feelings and the thoughts that I have. And as I would hear from you and others, we're not alone. We're very much in the same condition, facing the same challenges. We need to be open and good listeners and supportive for each other. So we're hearing this from the people that we call, and that's what we're trying to do with them. And they, in turn, want to do that with their colleagues, their business friends, their employees, their families.
Yep. And from them or elsewhere, have you heard too, in terms of like how people are doing the exploration right now and kind of reimagining things, so that, you know, some people say this is the greatest opportunity we may have in our lifetimes to actually change things. Others are still trying to figure out what that means. So what have you heard or seen in terms of how people are doing that exploration and figuring out what those new ways of doing things may be?
There's a lot of different ways. I would say that personally, I have experienced a surge in the amount of email that I get, and there have been wonderfully generous invitations from smart people, smart organizations, thought leaders, global thought leaders that have offered webinars, and I have participated in a number of those, and they have very honestly stirred me, disturbed me, given me enough things to think about for the next 10 years. And so we're today in a rare window of need, and who knows how long it's going to last. But it's like people that in one time or another have gone through a disruption in their work. They have experienced an uninvited opportunity to change the pace of work. Sometimes they don't come to work because they don't have a job anymore. And as we talk to these people, they come to us with questions and say, golly, what should I be doing? Should I be out networking, 6, 8 hours a day? My advice to them is to take this uninvited opportunity and go do something that you've never had the time, the freedom, the capacity to do. Travel, explore, go with friends, go with your kids. See and do things that have been in the back of your mind, but you never really had the capacity to go do that. And so that, for many people, is a kind of a natural, but it needs a nudge. It's kind of a natural occurrence, but you need to nudge and suggest to them. In some companies that have I would say, a more disciplined approach to business development, we see a new thing arising, and it's kind of a scouting team.
Mhm.
Couple people with high skills, high perceptive and outreach and relational skills have in a couple of situations been called and given a full-time assignment to go scout, go explore, get your head out of the building, go look at stuff that's adjacent to, ahead of, beside what we are doing now. Look at competition, look at new trends. And so it's these scouting teams that come back and they go out and see and hear and gather and then dump their pack sack on the table and start to sort and organize. What is it you're finding? And so the scouting and then the organizing what they see into clusters. You can't catalog and index everything you see in here, but there are certainly patterns that will emerge. And some of the things that I find to be very attractive and powerful as I've talked to these people who have done their scouting and exploration in a more structured way, they see the great benefit of leaping rather than stepping ahead. Go right over the obstacles, the barriers, the limitations into new space and ignore the constraints and limitations of what you were doing by doing something that's brand new and starting fresh. You know, the interesting example there is in the search for the vaccine for the coronavirus, the company that seems to be the farthest ahead is a 7-month-old business. And what did they do? They said, well, there's a need here. Let's work on it. And so they've come fresh, and for whatever reasons, they're now one of the leaders in the search for a vaccine.
Yeah, that's a good example. As you were talking, there were two questions that came to my mind. One was when you were talking about those webinars, there are so many things that we're getting sent to us from experts. And on the marketing side, if you're the marketer, you're trying to figure out how to, get beyond all that noise and have people pick up what you're saying. On the flip side, if you're a busy CEO or business owner, how do you know which webinar or which expert to listen to?
I would offer a personal opinion that it's probably not from the media, the news feeds. It probably arises more from a small circle of people you trust that have the values, the experiences that align with yours. And I've found that if I have a mindful screen on what do I look at, what do I consider, I need to have some notion of the underlying values and the purpose that this organization has for its activity and existence in the first place, and why are they putting this webinar, this information out. When I know that I am receiving and talking to organizations and people that have values that align with mine, that gives me interest and a willingness to take time, take an hour, take 45 minutes, whatever it might require. So it's the screen of like-minded people whose opinion and advice you trust. You really need to find that trust in what you're hearing and seeing so that you remember it and use it and find value in it.
Mm-hmm. And then you also mentioned scouts, and you send those scouts out. How do you navigate when you have scouts coming back with conflicting reports, or they may all have the same kind of reports, but people internally within your organization are saying, no, we can't go that way, or we need to do something different. How do you navigate in these kinds of times when there really isn't much of a map?
Yeah. I've been a Boy Scout. I've been canoeing, camping, hiking pretty much all my life from my early teens, and have learned that when you're out in new space, wilderness or something that approaches wilderness, you don't have roads, you don't have the internet. You need to have a sense of orientation. Where is north? What direction am I facing? Well, you get that if it's sunny and if you can see the sunrise and the sunset. If you don't, then you have to use other means. So there's always a need when you go out on these explorations to have a sense of where your north is. What direction are you headed and why are you headed there? And then you need to have what I would call some progress markers. Are you making progress? Do you feel like there is a little fact, a little piece of information, an opinion, and they start to link together? You start to find clusters and formations of things that are aggregating. When that starts to happen, that's where the electricity comes on and the energy comes up, and you need to say, I think we're finding something here. Oh yeah, and see this other group, this other company, this other country. Look at what they're doing. Let's pay more attention to that. And so you You explore with a sense of direction. You gather and cluster and look for aggregation, and then you go deeper where you see things that are showing results and proving effective for other people that are pursuing new things.
So Steve, what do you do when you're so busy with everything on your plate and you know you need to do more, but you don't have that capacity?
It's a resource question. And the resource, as you said, could be time, bandwidth. The resource that has limitations or leaves you flat-footed might be financial. It might be access to talent or technology. When you find these shortfalls, don't hang your head. Go find someone who has it and walk alongside of them. Invite them to go down the path with you. Get actively, aggressively, riskily involved in partnering. So take some risks. Maybe talk to a competitor. Talk to somebody that you've admired and never thought that they would have interest in you. This might be the time. So
How do
look
you,
for interesting new partners.
how do you find the right partner though? I mean, first of all, you can know the kind of partner you need, but then how do you find the best person to fit that need, and B, somebody who has the time, and C, somebody who will spend the time with you?
If it happens fast, if it happens easy, if it feels right, try it. You'll make some mistakes, but it's so much better to try these new things than to sit and wait for perfect. Perfect never. Good enough to go. Do it now. Do it yesterday.
That reminds me of what it's like being a journalist.
Yes.
There's always a deadline. You got to get it
Right.
done.
Yep.
Okay. Steve, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I just wanted to ask you though, are any other advice for business owners and leaders today in terms of things they should be doing? You've mentioned quite a few good ones already, but anything else?
I would be remiss if I did not talk briefly about one of my great sources of purpose, and it's really a calling, and that is a realization that in our life, our work, our careers, our businesses, we have done much. We have gained and built wealth. Wealth is not just financial, but it's an accumulation of experience and contacts and relationships and connections and intellectual property. This abundance deserves to be shared. And especially now for families and organizations that have crested the hill and they're looking into the next chapter of life. I mean, you come to normal retirement age and good health, you have a 25-year life expectancy. What are you going to do with the next quarter of a century? This is where the abundance can and needs to be shared in purposeful ways. And so in that regard, I've been a part of a group that has helped build and support a nonprofit that does a matching of business talents, high-level business talents with organizations that have needs. And so we're helping, encouraging owners, leaders, as they come to the crest of the hill and go through changes. And we're in big change time right now. What is the abundance that you have that you can be sharing with others? And by doing that, they will be benefited, but you will receive perhaps even more fulfillment by your sharing than the people you're helping.
Well, that's a really good thought. And I think we are seeing that too with a lot of the younger generation now.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them don't have jobs, or they have some buffer because of the supplemental unemployment payments, and they are out there in droves volunteering. So I hope that sticks. And then for people who are older, I hope what you're talking about sticks as well, because I think that's a really good point.
And maybe just the last thought, doing more of what you're doing, inviting people to share what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, because it may not be the best thing that I've ever seen or done, but it could be relevant and very helpful for somebody else. And so share what you're seeing. Let your experiences be an encouragement, a guide, a next step forward for other people on the path. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thanks, Steve. And also thank you for giving me about 4 to-dos.
Well, good.
Very good points. So thank you. And thanks for sharing with everybody through this video and podcast, your thoughts and your perspective.
Privileged to do this. Thank you, Bill.
I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners. And if you have any questions you'd like to run by Steve or anyone else at the Platinum Group, you can call them at 952-829-5700. You can also learn more about Steve and the Platinum Group by going to theplatinumgrp.com. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.